Great. Welcome to the Revenue Squared podcast. Today, we are excited to have with us Aaron Ross. He is the mastermind behind the sales strategy Predictable Revenue, which completely transformed the way companies approach their sales process. So, Aaron, how's it going?
Good. By the way, I kind of like the bit of an evil flavor of the word mastermind.
It does have a little bit of a of an evil touch.
Yeah.
I wanted to start off with just getting to know you a little bit and how you came up with predictable revenue.
Oh, yeah. Let's start with a really simple question. Okay.
Yep.
Um, well, hey, so since this podcast is for people who are newer to sales, right?
Yeah.
All right. So, I was, um, there's a pivotal time in my career. Well, I mean, there's been lots of pivotal times. I feel like every day is a pivot sometimes. Uh, so I had had a business fail. I've been kind
Hmm.
of an engineer in school, and when I was younger, programming, engineering, and then did investment banking, and it started a company, and it failed. And I'd done some sales before. I didn't really thought about it as sales. Like I'd sold ads for the school newspaper, and I'd done some door-to-door stuff, and I'd had a painting, summer painting business, one of those franchises. And I can't
Yeah.
remember. Oh yeah, the same one that Elon Musk's brother did College Pro Painters. It's the same thing. So someone gives you this kind of business in a box for the summer, and you have to sell, but they don't really talk about the word. I don't think the word selling ever came up. And so it was never like this. Oh, of the variety of important skills in your life that you need to, if you want to be successful at anything in your life, whether it's starting a nonprofit or getting promotions, like time management or energy management, communication. Like sales is one of those that in that big bucket of a few things that are really key. I had no idea. And it wasn't until after we'd lost millions of dollars, the company failed. And this is back in, you know, 2000, early 2000s, 2001. And a lot of lessons there in starting a company. And really, it's kind of like have you heard of the curse of knowledge? So it's
No.
like to some extent, well, it's like when you know too much of something, sometimes it holds you back. Well, the opposite is the
Hmm.
blessings of ignorance. When you don't know how hard something's going to be, kind of like the first time you have a baby, or you have
Yep.
as a couple. Um, so I started a company, we ended up doing this, the other raised some money, it all went bankrupt. One of the reasons was because as a CEO, founder, I had a co-founder, I didn't know sales and how to build a team. And so we'd hired a VP of sales, and I had abdicated. I didn't delegate. I abdicated my understanding of sales. Oh, this guy will figure it out and make it work. And when it wasn't working, I had no idea what to do. It's almost like if I had, started a restaurant, hired a chef, and now he'll figure out the menu, he'll figure out all this, and people didn't like the menu. Like, I don't know. I never worked in a restaurant making food. I never done that part. And so after that, I was like, you know what? Before I start into the company, I want to know how to kind of what professional sales looks like and how to build a professional sales team. So, really important at that point, I've been CEO of this company. I mean, it was a small company, whatever, looking back.
Hmm.
But it's like, okay, one thing I did well is I didn't let my ego stop me. It's like, I want to get a sales job. And by the way, there was like a year or something break between a company going under, or there's literally like on Fridays, I'd go home and I wrote about this in Predictable Revenue. I'd drink some kind of, I don't know, alcohol, vodka drink or something while playing video games just to like numb the pain of my dream dying. Brutal. So it took like a year and a half to do some other things and come, all right, I want to work again. I'm getting a sales job. There's this little company called salesforce.com, which really was, I mean, little 20 million in revenue ish and 150, 200 people. And the only job they had was, this most junior sales job, answering the 800 line. They didn't have any quota carrying jobs available. And I wasn't even sure what all this meant. And I didn't even know what a CRM was. Because again, I had this VP of sales. He got the CRM. And I'm like, I don't know what this shit is. And but I was like, I don't care. I'm gonna take the most entry level job if I need to, because it'll make for a better story later. I'm like, I'll get in there. I don't even know how it's going to work. I'll figure it out and then I'll figure something else out from there. Like that was my plan. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to learn this thing and then I'll figure something else out. And that really was a pivotal moment because I realized going through it and then kind of learning sales and then, creating a new type of sales process there and kind of just, how do I say this? Like realizing sales, it's like seeing sales too as a life skill where you're selling not just there's the activity of selling customers, but you're also learning how to sell internally to your own management. You're learning to sell if you're, raising money. So the application of the idea of selling in so many areas of life. And so I say, look, and to bring this long answer to a short question to a close is, for example, you have a chance at any job, especially a sales job, it could be any job, to get paid to learn. It's an attitude. You can get paid to just go in and clock your time and then leave. Or you can get paid to say, look, I'm here to learn something. And then as you learn it, like I want to learn something else. And it's like a reverse MBA, get paid to learn. And that was my approach. And I think it worked amazingly well. And anyone going into sales, you can go in thinking, oh, I want to make money, or I want to get X, or I want to get a title. And it's not the same as learning the actual practical skills that can go into selling, whether it's at the junior levels of dealing with leads, inbound, outbound, research, whether it's actual like selling, small business. There's a lot of flavors of selling, right? So it's really easy to get caught up in the career path and lose sight of the fact that the more skills that you learn, and there's so many skills you can learn in any job in sales, the more prepared you will be to advance faster later.
Aaron, on that note, so you joined Salesforce, entry level job, with
Yeah.
with possibly like 10% of the knowledge that you have now on sales, right? What are the first things that you learned that say, okay, now I've upgraded, I was beginner level, and now I'm at least a little bit more proficient.
Um, well, I was in a role where there was quite fast feedback on metrics of what was working. So this role was
Yeah.
like responding to inbound leads. Now there's a lot of versions you might call inbound SDR. There's a lot of labels for this, but there's people who would submit leads on the website at Salesforce or call the 800 number, and someone had to respond to them. Is this a real lead? Is it a duplicate? Is it trash? Is it whatever? Like filter the
Hmm.
leads and pass the good ones to salespeople. And there was a half dozen of us or so. And so I was, late 20s, I don't know, ex-CEO, raised venture capital, along with, a bunch of some other people who there's a variety of people. This is after one of the big dot-com busts. And so there were some junior people. I don't know, there's a range of people here. And, every day, because you kind of measure these points, if you talk to a certain number of leads and if you can, if it was a good lead versus not, you can kind of measure were you on the leaderboard very quickly. And so kind of like day by day, I could watch, was I talking to more people? Was I qualifying more, and so on. And I don't know, just aggressive. I know, so I could see points wise, was I doing better? Now it's a bit of an illusion sometimes because when you're doing lead qualification, you can qualify, and it was mostly kind of self-qualified. Like I would assign stuff. So it is possible to say, hey, I'm getting all these good leads, and I'm passing them over,
Hmm.
and let's say I pass over twice as many leads, or maybe there's twice as many I think were good. But someone else who passes over half as many, we might end up generating the same amount of revenue from both sets of leads. Right. So again, this is where you have quantity and quality, and there's so many factors. Is it the quality of the leads that someone's getting? Is it the quality of the technique and following up and talking to them? Is it the salespeople who you pass these to who either follow up or don't? Is it someone getting small leads or big? So there's all these like bits and bobs, you'd say in Scotland, around how to actually gauge you're getting these results. And are you doing something different, or is it window dressing? So, but in other words, but I was able to see, hey, I was doing more. I was putting more on the board than other people. And I was trying other things. Like, I was just being creative because I was like, I want to make something happen. So I was trying different techniques. I was kind of thinking, cliches a bit out of the box. I'll give you one example, tactical one, which would be, back then, you would always talk to these leads on the phone. Right? You call them. And still, there's really no better way to get to get so much communication, information, transmission, trust, and so on very quickly than talking to someone on the phone. And whether that's honestly like dating or sales, like human to human, maybe only video calls are better than just like phone calls because there's just more types of connection going back and forth right
Yeah.
away. And no one had tried what I kind of started to do. I'm like, there are these like 6 or 7 questions. I just took those questions and I put them in an email. No one else did this. They're like, email, let's talk. And I just said, hey, email, let's talk. And if not, maybe just fill these questions below for some people who didn't want to. And a bunch of people would respond back with answers. And so I'd call like, okay, that's good. I'll pass it on. And, it's hard to say. I don't remember if that actually ended up adding to more revenue or not, or if it, but it was kind of like better for some people to do that. And I was like, rather than saying, hey, we need to talk to every single lead on the phone, I'm like, some people don't want to do that, or it's harder. I'll do that. And just little things like that. I can't remember
Mhm.
exactly what was going on, but I remember like, I'm going to try some stuff. I don't know if it's going to work. That other people didn't think would, the mandate was talk to everyone needs to call every lead all the time. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense because some leads, you don't want to talk. There's all these types of leads. Like, that doesn't make any sense to spread your precious energy across all these leads. And some are like really low quality and some are much. So I'm going to try some other stuff. Um, so I could see kind of quickly that some things were working.
And there, like I see one of the pillars of predictable revenue that's definitely influenced in how I organize teams, which is have a predictable lead generation, which is define your ICP, build your list, track conversions, make sure that you're talking to the right people. And then I think another aspect that you completely changed was the specialization of roles.
Yep.
What was a light bulb moment for you saying, you know what, I think we should have separate roles for different outcomes?
Yeah. Well, the first one you mentioned is so important. I'll just reemphasize,
Yeah.
especially if you're new to sales, just really understand who your ideal customers are and focus on them primarily and learn to spend more time on who looks to be ideal and less time on people who are like, oh, they could use it, right? It doesn't matter how much time you try to spell you're selling oranges to apple buyers. They're just okay. So, and it's so important that became the first section of the follow-up book called From Impossible to
Yep.
Inevitable, called Nail a Niche. Okay. So the next part around specialization. On LinkedIn, there's lots of people who say, "Oh, predictable revenue is dead and SDRs are dead." And like, I mean, it's all evolving. What the predictable revenue book had two or three like really big ideas. One was, kind of outbound prospecting in a very methodical way, which wasn't that new an idea, honestly. I was just doing it in a new way with email and in a more structured way that I think people had ever really seen publicly. I'm sure people before that had done very methodical systems. But actually, even more importantly than that was what you mentioned, the idea of specialization. Again, I didn't create that. I just popularized it. And I also think I said, you have to do this. It's not an option. I learned that because working at Salesforce, we specialized. There's inbound lead response and outbound prospecting, which that's what I made successful, breaking out outbound prospecting to its own thing and actually making that work. They tried to do that at Salesforce before, it just hadn't worked at all. So I made that work separate from closers and customer success and so on. They were already doing that. But what happened was I left Salesforce and I'm like, when I leave Salesforce, the one thing I don't want to do is sales consulting. Anyway, I ended up in sales consulting for a while. And I, worked with some clients and I just realized at some point if they didn't specialize their people, the thing, people do what's most urgent, not what's most important.
Mm.
And so this is why, again, if you have everyone, managers always complain. I wrote about this in the book. Everyone complains, oh, my salespeople don't do enough prospecting. Well, if you're complaining about 90% or 95% of your people not doing enough of this thing, it's not them. It's your expectation or the system.
Yep.
So if you break out that prospecting, at least cold prospecting, to a different function, and it doesn't work for every company, but for where it makes sense, then you have people dedicated to this function. Again, whether this is actually breaking out customer success or inbound lead response or whatever the breakout is, then it's going to happen. And I think, and again, more often in the past, you'd have sales teams where salespeople, again, out of tradition for hundreds of years, they would do all their own prospecting, respond to their own leads, sign customers, and sometimes manage accounts. How can anyone do all that well? Now, there are a few exceptions in like a lot of financial, not a few, I mean, there's lots of exceptions to that. But in B2B software, whether it's SaaS or software over certain deal sizes, like you need to specialize in some way. Now, last thing is in the books it says inbound, outbound, signing new customers, and basically after you sign, it could be a lot like implementation, services, customer success, account management, and so on. Like, so it's not about doing those jobs. It's about the idea of specialization, which is what jobs need to be done and how can you best divide and conquer with the team to do those jobs. So I don't care if people do the SDR job or not. That's not the point. I don't care if people do
Mhm.
outbound or not. That wasn't the point of the book. That was like, honestly, people want this outbound thing. It's kind of annoying to me, but I'll put it in there because that's what I was known for. That'd be, but the bigger ideas are specialization, and there's one other one called seeds, nets, and spears, which just understanding you've got word of mouth leads that have their own metrics and funnel and
Mhm.
different expectations, different than marketing generated leads, which are different than outbound generated leads, and just understand these different types of leads and how to generate them and measure them. That was the other big idea. So, you know,
Awesome. Aaron, I'm going to latch on to one of the things that you said, which is that the market obviously evolves, and I think there are certain things in predictable revenue that are going to be timeless, and that there are things that are just going to evolve and they're going to adapt to.
totally. Yeah.
What do you think? So I think we talked about some of the elements that are timeless. What do you think is going to be evolving from the model that you proposed? And if you could write the book all over again, what would you add today?
Well, okay. Well, let's start with that one because if I rewrote
Mm,
the book again today, like the thing that was missing from that book was the, as mentioned, the nail and niche section that went into the next book, the From
yeah.
Impossible to Inevitable book. I knew that because after working with companies for a while, consulting and so on, I was like, oh, this thing that when people struggle is they haven't nailed the niche. It's kind of like product market fit. Are you ready to grow? And so, because a lot of early stage companies like, I want to do outbound, and they didn't really have the clarity of ideal customer or the product and so on. They just paid lead generation of any type was not. They weren't ready for that. It could be
Mm,
outbound or paid marketing. They're just too early. So that would be the thing that really I would redo. And by the way, I'm not going to rewrite the book. I don't have any interest in it. But if I did, and then in the book, and the thing is, like, if you read between the lines, there's the principles behind in there aren't going to change, right? Having a repeatable system, the tactics are all going to change, right? The evolution, like, yeah, I think in the book I talked about sending emails and referral emails, and there's certain response rates, and all those metrics are out the window now. Every year, and by the way, I knew this 15 years ago. I was like, or 10 years ago, any lead generation system will be a victim of its own success because as
yeah.
it gets to be more popular and as the world gets busier and inboxes are busier, what works when people start to see that a lot, then they start to identify that as kind of a lead gen thing and they're going to ignore it more, right? Online ads. That's why it's just hard to stay ahead of the curve. And so that's also why. But at the time, I just sharing what worked. So the tactics would all change. But what wouldn't change would be, again, kind of predictable lead generation. I also started would add one thing is, which is this idea you need to be prepared to be more and more creative because as time goes on, the time for which some technique works, if it used to be like 10 years, it'd work, and then 5 years, and maybe now it might work for 5 months or a couple years or something. It's going to be small and smaller because as we're more connected, someone has a great voicemail technique or an email technique or a TikTok technique. And then when everyone starts to find out about it in that little niche, and we start to see that as, oh, that's a
Mm,
technique, it doesn't work as well.
yeah.
So specialization, seeds, nets, and spears, and just kind of repeatability. We're all now. There's one other section on management, and a great example was I think another principle that would stand is more transparency with your team. An example around redesigning sales comp plans by getting the sales team involved in that redesign and working with them rather than designing it in a vacuum and just like sending it to them.
Absolutely. I really like the concept, I think, of continuously innovating, because the moment that something works, it's probably gonna everybody's gonna be doing it, and it's gonna work less, right? So I think
Yeah. So you
a
gotta stay on your toes.
yeah, a framework that I have a good friend who He's been in the podcast before. Kyle Coleman talks about is like figure out something that works but is not scalable, and the moment that it starts working, figure out how to scale it, because that's when you're going to be doing things that nobody else has thought of because it's not scalable.
Yeah, doing unscalable things is I love that.
Yeah.
So
Um,
especially with I have tons of kids. Uh, by definition, most of my life isn't scalable. And why should things be scalable? Like the word scalable, it's
yeah.
so overrated. Like being scalable, what are you trying to accomplish? Like you just scalable is a means to what end.
Yeah.
So
Um, Aaron, on that, who should come up with these innovative ideas? Is it a skill that we should be hiring for when it comes to new SDRs, or is it a skill that we should be that the manager should be looking after? Everybody, the whole company.
yeah, I mean, I'd like to say, you know, it's tricky. If you have a bunch of people, let's say 10, I'll just pick a round number. There's probably one. There's some small number which are going to be uh, builders, like innovative that way, and that's okay. Might be you don't want the manager to be the one necessarily. As long as someone is, you would like it to be a system where you have some innovation, but people are weird, right? So it's hard to you can't control that. I think a lot of people would like to sell you a coaching program to say, oh, we can increase your innovation by 32%, but I don't know. So I think though it's often for companies, and bigger the companies, there tend to be some companies that tend to be bigger or maybe more controlling, and it's easy to block innovation. It's easy to say do this way, and there's not a lot of leeway for experimentation, getting things wrong, because people have to be on
Mm.
you have to be on quota right now doing XYZ, and that pressure sometimes can create some breakthroughs, but a lot of times it prevents breakthroughs because people are under too much
Yeah.
pressure. I wish I had an easy answer, but I don't. And if anyone did, they would already be billionaires probably. So I think that this is um, where I believe things are going with, especially with AI, is that the tsunami of copycatting, whether it's email techniques, online ads, just content, and this avalanche of content and messages and information that everyone's receiving or being kind of thrown at, whether it's a LinkedIn inbox or paid ads or wherever, means that um, for anyone to be successful, and I don't know if this is next year or next 20 years, that the more that you can tap into your own innate creativity, authenticity, your voice, your style, whether it's the way you write a weird email, send a video calls, content, music, there's really unlimited ways you can express yourself in creative ways or ways that are you and not limited to these little boxes we've been used to in the corporate world. The more that you can do that, and I know it's so cliche to be yourself. It's like, what does that mean? Well, I don't know. I was talking to my wife. It's hard to explain it till you can feel it. But the more that you can be a bit weird in your way that works for you and creative, then things that the AI can't copy easily and copycatters can't, like whatever you post on your website as a company, the copycatters, they're everywhere and they're just going to grow faster. So how do you stay ahead of the curve as an individual in a world of salespeople or as a company in a world of tons of competitors? There's a unique, there's technology, but there's a unique vibe that you in a company, we call it brand. I don't want to use the word brand, but you feel human, you feel like a thing, you feel real. And that's like going to be a precious resource, especially with avatars and all the fake shit. It can help you scale, but again, people will be surrounded not that long from all like what's real in all this world of things that sound good, but do I trust that? So trust is going to be a much scarcer, more precious commodity, right? That unique voice. So I think that's really key to practice. How can you tap into that as a person? One sample, again, sending audio messages on LinkedIn or video messages versus just text or mixing it up. That's one way you could do it. It's a simple way. I used to do haiku, not in sales, but before, like weird things that you like and you include in your communication some way. You kind of stand out to be different as long as it's you. I think that's actually more humanity is going to be, next big thing, hopefully.
How do you hire for that, Aaron?
I'm gonna ask you. I'm gonna ask you. Well, I do think that if you're a manager at your company and you're leaning in towards how can we balance, so there's the dark side of predictable revenue. Once you
Hmm.
have a company that's scaling and growing, it by definition limits kind of this weird, chaotic energy to allow weird, new stuff. Um, there's that I never read it, but the old book, The Innovator's Dilemma. But it's just because once you're like, we're on this thing, we're growing it, and oh, I want to go off and create some weird side project. No, we can't. We don't have any energy for that. And but even along the way, if the leaders, I believe, are hiring managers, kind of are more of themselves, and they're a little bit more. It's not even casual, right? Less, there's the corporate, the stereotype of like a corporate person who's very like stiff and in a suit. Okay, yeah, but there's a lot same version in the tech world, which is kind of the VC or the CEO who's still stiff in casual clothes, like we need the metrics and the KPIs. Da, 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 da. Um, so I think as the culture like leans into being a little more embracing of weird stuff, weird people, innovative. Weird is another name for possibly innovative. Sometimes people are just straight weird. I get that. So again, I think that is you're going to find people who vibe with you a bit more, who say, oh, I feel a bit more at home with that company. So it's in other words, in parenting, there's this idea that oh, I want to get my kids to eat vegetables. Like, why won't they eat vegetables? Well, are you eating vegetables? Why kids won't put their phones down? Well, are you putting your phone down? Like lead by example. So the best thing is to lead by example. And one thing that people don't do, for example, is post a bit more of themselves on social media that is not like polished and perfect. I have to look really good, right? The whole tech industry, I have to look really good. Yeah. Well, if I don't, then customers will or investors or blah blah. It's starting to break down a little bit. It's like I have to always look really good. Can't look like I fail. Can't look like I eat shit every day in some way, shape, or form, which everybody does. Um, so again, lead by example. I think is the idea. Don't try to look at someone else to fix it for you. How can you fix it first?
Yeah.
Come up with a creative hiring process, for example, to hire those people.
Oh, that's good. That's good. That's good advice. Yeah, I always find people that they just have that little bit of creativity, even during the hiring process. I was like, okay,
Yeah, you don't want
that person
boring
has
people.
something
You don't
different.
hire boring people unless you
Yeah,
want
yeah,
like unless it's a job. There's some jobs where it's not about being boring. Like accounting is boring to me, but for some people it'd be like really exciting.
yeah,
So I don't know, like hire the right person for the right thing. And but yeah, if you're in sales, someone unless you're in a
yeah,
very conservative, if you're selling to banks like old, like who've been around for a long time, you probably actually want people who might come off as a bit boring, a conservative. Boring is a bit of a has a negative connotation.
um,
So, but yeah, it's like lean into, what do you want to be in your own role? What do you want to see happen? And like, how can you lead
hmm,
by example?
yeah.
Be the change in the world that you want to see. And these things are so annoying if they're so true.
I know. Uh, Aaron, I was listening to a podcast today. Scott Galloway, who also moved to the UK from the US, and actually it's a personal question. He was saying that the US is the best place to make your money, and Europe is the best place to spend it. And he feels that later in his life, he realized that he just wanted to be in Europe because it's just a different way of life. How has it been for you moving from the US to Europe?
Yeah, I mean, probably that makes sense. It's probably easiest place to make money is the States,
Mm,
especially that. And I'm not saying that there's reasons why we're here. It wasn't about, yeah, there's just this different version of toxicity. Every culture has its positive side and its dark side.
yeah.
My kids, some of them love Japan. There's so many amazing things about Japan on social media and videos, but Japan has its dark side for sure that you don't see. I just want to be in Europe. It's way more interesting. I couldn't say if it's better or worse, but for me, it's better. And there's lots of people who grew up in Europe and they would love to go to the States in a variety, right? So, you know, I don't feel like I've gotten to travel as much as I'd like around Europe.
Yeah.
We have 10 kids, and between the first there was the pandemic, and then there was others like I left my predictable revenue company. That was a whole other shit show. Couldn't wait to be get out of that. Recreated some new stuff, and then this, that, and the other. We're trying to figure out the moving situation. So I'm excited still to get out with more of the family and explore Europe more. We've done some, but it's awesome. Like I could meet someone for coffee in Rome if I wanted to, if someone would do that. I've tried a couple people and they just haven't bit yet, like some of the friends who travel around or like in Paris. But yeah, my wife is taking our 10-year-old and older daughter to Paris Disneyland for a couple days next week because they can, and her birthday.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. The States has a lot of great things, but I don't miss it at this point.
Yeah. It's fair.
And you can make
My
money in the States without living there at this point, right?
that was exactly going to be my next question. For folks that are starting out their careers, there's like I feel there's like two themes. It's like always be in the office because there's a lot of synergies and you're going to learn from the people around you, or just work remote. You can work from wherever and just learn like real life lessons from wherever you live. I'm curious to hear where you stand on that, and particularly in sales. I mean, there's definitely an osmosis that you learn from other folks, but
Yeah.
is it necessary starting out your career?
I think it really, really, really helps, especially
Yeah,
starting out. And people do it every way. I mean, so it's a lot of it's finding your rhythm. Like, are you kind of meant to be more carnivore or more vegan or some blend? Like, that's kind of this whole thing is a company culture. There's lots of companies who've been remote from the start and they only do remote and they make that work.
yeah,
If I was younger, and again, we're starting to see, oh wow, working remote and being isolated. We already haven't. Our societies are so isolating already, especially for younger people, and not just younger but older, because of digitization and the
yeah,
just like the breakdown of societal of community in so many ways. And we haven't recreated what's new on the other side of that, right? Between getting rid of kind of, like we have our own community with so many kids. Whether there's 4 in the States, 6 here still. So I think again, if I was starting off in sales, I'm like, I I need to be around people because of I need friends and energy, and I want to learn. It's a faster way to learn. It's not for everybody, but
yeah,
if I had a company like that, again, it's like it depends on the founder. I know for me, doing remote, oh man, I don't think I could. I don't have any plans to do it to start and build a sales team remotely that way, unless I had people who were already they knew what they're doing.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, it's like you got to find your system. Pros and cons to both. But for younger people in sales teams, there's lots of reasons why there's companies who go back to doing a lot of in-person work, offices, and teams. There's so many benefits to that.
yeah. Agreed. Um, One last question. I know we're over time. Just wanted to see what are you up to these days?
About 5'7". You
Okay.
know, probably no. So I'm working on. All right. So I mentioned I had done predictable revenue consulting for like 10 years. I was done with that for a lot of
Yeah.
reasons. Couldn't wait to be done with that. Spring, I was like, just I was there. There's a lot to like about it, but to support a family. And then I got to the point of I need to do something
Mhm.
where it feeds my soul and makes money, but mostly something that I enjoy for the sake of the work itself.
Yeah.
And that took me 2 or 3 years to be like, okay, the things I want to do, which I would still do for free or probably even pay to do, would be like writing new books, but not about sales. Although I'm actually and book coaching, so if someone wanted to do a sales book, I'll coach them on it. So 2 new books. One's called Income Operating System. I'm doing with
Mhm.
someone else for personal finance, and another book called Eat Shit and Grow, which is about having a big family and making lots of money and dealing with all this, weird stuff of life. And if you're not willing, I don't really have a good subtitle, but the idea is if you're not willing to eat shit, or if you're not eating shit, that's how you grow. So that's the title I'm working under. So new books, coaching people in books, and I really want to get out back to nature somehow, working my hands more off screens as much. So that still be remains to be seen how this all kind of ties together. But I'm underway, kind of tying this back into a main message. I'm not sure what that is yet. So keynotes, like I have a keynote coming up some the next few months, calling the grind must die. It's got to change. A lot of it is around how do you bring back a spark of creativity, curiosity, excitement into what you do, and maintain that. Which again, like the tech industry definitely needs.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, you and I we have a conversation pending. Because as you know, one of my passions is sales and bringing it to the Spanish speaking
Yeah,
communities.
yeah. Write a book,
And
man. Be amazing.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do, and hopefully, I have you as my writing coach.
Yeah.
Should
I
be
mean,
amazing.
it'd be easier than you realize. So
Yeah, brilliant, Aaron. We are at time. I want to thank you so much for coming. It's always a pleasure to have you. And where can people follow you?
probably LinkedIn is one place, and I have a newsletter called Fresh Air, which is on Substack. So you know, freshair.substack.com, I think is the URL.
Aaron Ross, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
Take care.